Make the ground shake.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Game Hub. I'm your host, Gamer K, and it's time for the final video of this month, ladies and gentlemen. And as you can kind of tell by my shirt and the artwork and cosplay photo from one of my pals, and also the permanent Joker artwork in the middle, it's time for us to get down to the Rogues Gallery of Gotham with Gamer K's top 13 Batman villains. Now, unlike most of my top 13s, this one isn't going to have that many rules because I can't really do one per series. I'm basically going over the villains that I like and why I like them, what I don't like about them a little bit. I'm not going to do so much negativity because this is a top list, even though my top bad lists are always negative. A couple things I'm going to leave out. Mr. Freeze and Catwoman, I'm leaving off this list because I don't see them as villains that much. I see them more as, okay, Mr. Freeze is a villain most of the time, but at most other times he helps Batman in some ways. So I consider him a good guy a little bit, kind of an anti-hero. Same with Catwoman. She doesn't do bad things. She just likes to steal and also flirt with Batman. Also, for the sake of favoritism, Joker is off the list. Because if people see my art, people have seen my channel, people who know me and see my artwork up there, I love Joker. For me, he's the quintessential perfect villain, basically. So, in that regard, he's off the list. Now, let's get down to the top 13 Batman villains. And why top 13? Because at the Game Hub, only the odd can become number 1. Let's start off the list. Number 13, Gotham missed a big opportunity with Jeff Dunham. Jeff Dunham is the ventriloquist. They could have done it earlier on, but no, they save it for Mr. Penn. Yeah, we see how well that went. Even though it was kind of cool how they did it a little bit, Jeff Dunham, come on. The ventriloquist is starting off the list. Ventriloquist for me is one of those rare villains that isn't used a lot in the media. I mean, obviously in the comics they do it, in the TV shows they've done it, but in terms of movies and live action shows and the games, ventriloquist isn't used as often. I mean, I know in the Arkham games that we see Scarface, the puppet, and we hear about it, but we don't really see the ventriloquist in it, which honestly kind of sucks. So, I can't remember, Arthur Wesker, I think, the original ventriloquist, was a schizophrenic and a ventriloquist. And then he found Scarface the puppet, who was basically carved out of an old hanging tree in the asylum. And he, as a schizophrenic, kind of like the Colonel Mines episode of The Lesson, the ventriloquist sees Scarface not as a puppet, but as the guy who's, again, pulling his strings. Then later on in the show, after Whisker's death, I believe, or I think this is done in the show or the comics, Peyton Riley, who is a female ventriloquist, finds Scarface, and it kind of does this really cool Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing with them. I would really love to see that done in TV, in future cartoons and video games. I think this could be great, and that's one of the reasons I really like him, because he's kind of a split character with only that feels compelled to obey his own thoughts, like a lot of schizophrenics. And I watch a lot of crime shows where they do psychological tests, and it's a great representation. The only thing I don't like about ventriloquist that much, again, it doesn't really get that much attention in any kind of media, which sucks. And I'm not going to try to do a ventriloquist joke because, yeah. Coming in at number 12, TwoFace. All honesty, I didn't think Two-Face was a great villain when I first started watching Batman. Mostly because, I mean, I watched Batman the animated series, and I played the video games, like the Arkham games, before I even, like, watched all of it, a lot of the animated series. And he never really appeared on The Batman, which I watched, which was more cartoony and goofy. But after really going through the backstory, I gotta admit, it's beautifully done. A district attorney, like, of all people turning evil, it's brilliantly done. And the way he has that kind of split decision with his two-headed coin, that is writing in of itself brilliant. They add it to his persona, they add it to his villain persona, and it just, I like his problems with duality a little bit. Duo banks, double timing. One thing I really like about Two-Face, the fact is that even though he is scarred half, like he is a villain now, in a lot of, there is that smidge of human decency still in him and his old self in it. It just takes a little harder for him to come out because of his other personality, which I think really captivates the character of Two-Face really well. The video games, they do him beautifully. And the TV shows, they do him amazing. A little pissed off Gotham never really got around to doing him, even though they were building him up, which sucked. But overall, Two-Face is a fantastic villain. I can't wait to see him in more media, and hopefully they don't do anything stupid with him. I'm looking at you, Robot Chicken, and the four-face stupid bit. Coming at number 11, stay out of the water, because it's time to feed the killer Croc. One of my better favorite of the mutated Batman villains, because it wasn't like it was experimented on. This was a genetic condition that progressed, and it started to divulge into his Waylon Jones's identity. That's Killer Croc's real name. I didn't go through. One thing I love about him is, again, his genetic condition, which kind of fed into his becoming his persona, because he got scaly skin, he was a little bit bigger than most, and I think his teeth became pointed, or maybe he filed them, I'm not 100% sure on that. And as he got older, he became a wrestler in the underground, and just the look of him being this humanoid crocodile, it's beautiful with the real scaly skin, the blue, the yellow reptilian eyes, the teeth, the size of him. And yeah, my first introduction to Killer Croc was the Batman animated show, where the Batman, not Batman animated series, he was more of a gang boss than anything else, which I get they can't really do all the sick, dark things in that series. And I didn't really like the design of him in the animated series, because he just looked like I don't even know. But it was in the Batman Arkham games where Killer Croc really hit a home run with me. I loved the backstory, his towering physique and design. And not only that, but his lair in Arkham Asylum. Tell me you all weren't getting tell me you weren't all hearing the Jaws music. I was hearing that throughout the entire level as I was playing the game, and that's why I never play Arkham Asylum with the lights off or at nighttime. I am not joking. That game still gives me creeps. And the design and the way they did Killer Croc, that's one thing I love about him, is that he allowed his genetic disorder to create his own persona, turning him into a psychotic, animalistic, cannibal psychopath. And I love that. Well, tick-tock, we're done with this Croc. Coming in at number 10, Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin. One of the few villains in Batman that doesn't have a psychological disorder. He's just a gangster who is who deals in weapons and miscellaneous items. Gotham is what really made me love Penguin a lot, because Robin Lord Taylor as him was perfect. And all their other medias kind of portray him kind of weirdly, like this fat, round, small dude with a pointed nose, and the way he dresses kind of like a penguin, with like Danny DeVito. That's it. He's the only one other than Robin Lord Taylor to play Penguin live action. And others included Tom Kenny as the Batman animated series. And a lot of his backstory is he's mostly a gangster for the entire time. And he doesn't really have that big kind of psychological disorders that the other villains on the list do. And that's why I like him a little bit more. He gets a little bit over near the bottom of the list because he doesn't have a disorder, because he's more human. I say that, but because I mean, like, he's more normal. He's a normal villain. He uses guns. He uses his henchmen to do his dirty work. He's invested with money and the luxury of life. He doesn't choose to reform the world or take revenge on someone. He's just a guy who wants to rule Gotham's underworld and get away with it. And it's the simplicity of the Penguin that makes me love him so much. It's the simplicity of his design, his backstory. His overall schemes are basic at the very core, because normally when you think of Batman and greatest villains, Penguin gets up there, but not for the reasons other people think. They memorize him because he's relatable in a way, because he's a guy who wants to be just the underworld kingpin in Gotham. Like, no big schemes, pretty much. He just wants to rule the underworld. That's what makes him a great villain, and that's what makes him gets him on the list. Coming at number 9. Hush. One of the few villains I've never heard of until the video game. Yeah, I know a lot of you right now are probably wondering why is that, because when I was a kid, I didn't really watch the Batman shows that much. I watched the Batman animated every Saturday morning, but I never watched the animated series. I never read comics as a kid. So that's kind of why my introduction to Batman is basically through TV shows, the movies, the video games. And god damn it, if Hush isn't one of the most base, psychotic, and vendetta-needed villain, it's Hush. Tommy Elliott was a friend of Bruce Wayne when he was a kid, and then Bruce's parents died, and then Tommy saw that Bruce got everything, all the money, all the fame, everything, and Tommy was green with envy. So he caused his parents to get into an accident where I think his father died and his mother lived, because guess who saved his parents? Guess who saved his father or his mother? I can't remember which one. Surgeon Thomas Wayne. So so he started this before Bruce's parents were killed, and that, oh my lord, that reveal, like, I didn't know that all this while I played the Arkham games, because Arkham City is where Hush really first came in, and then Arkham Knight, it wasn't the best side story, but at least it filled in a few gaps. And not only that, but I really loved how he always resented Bruce because of his wealth, how he got everything while he was kind of a sidestep a little bit. So he became the serial killer Hush and bandaged up his face. I know there's different varieties of Hush in the DC universe, but I'm just going based on what I know. And the fact that he found victims that had skin grafts that were close to Bruce Wayne's face, killed them, removed their skin, surgically implemented it onto himself to give himself Bruce Wayne's face. I mean, that reveal in Arkham City was beautifully done, and it's psychopathic. He wants what Bruce Wayne has and to destroy him. Well, after that whole thing in Arkham Knight, he's gonna need another facelift. Coming in at number 8, Clayface. I don't even know how to explain it. An actor that becomes a living mold of clay. So he's an actor, nonetheless. The way he acts, the way he talks, the way he can shapeshift. Carlo Basello was an actor until an accident happened, or from what I gather, he needed money because he wasn't a good actor. And then once that happened, he became a clay mass. The able to shapeshift is an amazing trait because we see it a lot in comics, we see it a lot in TV shows, but never before do we actually get to see it with an actual mass that is used to make random stuff like clay. And that's a beautiful concept to make a villain, a shape-shifting clay monster. That's just beautifully. Not only that, but he also keeps his personality as an actor every time he does a role. For example, the Riddle in Arkham Asylum, beautifully done. And in Arkham City, I did not see any of it coming, the ending. I'm not giving it away. But for people who have played the game, you know. It's just beautiful of how well a character like this can go. And the way they did him in The Batman was a little off kilter, but they had to work with what they were doing. But Clayface will always be one of my favorite villains because of his uniqueness, because of how devastating he can be to the Dark Knight. It's just perfect all around, and Clayface deserves a honorable mention award because he's not the top actor in this list. Coming at number 7, Calais, it's Fragile Day, and the Hatter has come to play. Mad Hatter is beyond psychotic. I mean, a dude obsessed with hats and Alice in Wonderland. How can you create a villain based on that? I don't know how they did it, but Jervis Tetch was the creation behind that mind. But good God, does it not work? No, wait, no, I'm wording that wrong. God, does it work? There we go. Like, using hats for mind-controlling devices and being a master of hypnosis. Not only that, but he has a very deep psychological need. And it's kind of creepy when you play the Arkham games and you see what, especially in Arkham Origins, when you see what, his victim of Alice, the girl, it's so creepy half the time. It definitely feels like an episode of Criminal Minds a little bit. And that's what makes Jervis Tetch a little bit more dangerous than some of the previous villains on the list. He's psychotic because he, like all the other villains, unlike the other villains, he doesn't know he knows what he's doing is wrong, but in his own mind, he just sees it as a Wonderland story. And that's what makes him very dangerous, especially in the real world. He's not just a danger in the real world. It shows what people with this kind of condition, how dangerous they are to random people in real life. And that's what makes Jervis Tetch such a cool villain. He's fantasy, but he's also a little hint of reality within his madness. I also do love it numerous times, even though Batman is supposed to be well-trained and not to be tricked by any of this and to be immune. Every single game, he's constantly manipulated by Jervis. Now, I'm starting to wonder if Batman's training isn't all BS. Batch. And the whole and that's what, and again, his hypnotism, the theme, not only that, but he makes all of his brainwashed henchmen wear the masks of characters of Wonderland. It makes it even better with his motif. So, we're late for the rest of this list. And I got nothing that rhymes with list, so let's just keep going. Coming in number 6. What's a psychotic clown without a cute and very crazy sidekick? Harley Quinn, ladies and gentlemen. everyone's favorite, mostly because of Suicide Squad. How many of you loved her before Suicide Squad came out? How many of you still love her because of Suicide Squad? And we're good. Harley Quinn is without a doubt one of the most psychotic characters to ever come. Because I'm just gonna say this: a lot of these picks are here because of how dangerous they are in the real world as well as fantasy. Like I studied with Jervis Tetch. Harley was a budding psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum. A lot of her backstory is mishmash through numerous games and media, but I'm just going based on what I know from the games and the story, basically. So she started out at Arkham as an intern, and her first patient was none other than the Joker. And then he starts working his clownish charm on her. And oh boy, was that a whirlwind on fire romance. Talk about a shotgun wedding where the bride is actually holding a shotgun. And it was love at first psychotic laugh. It's beautifully done too, because she starts like talking to him about how his obsession with Batman, and she starts to feel for him. She really gets into his mind, or he gets into her mind a little bit and starts kind of tangling up all that little brain matter in her head, like it's a psychotic Christmas sweater that was given to you by an aunt who hates you. The entirety of Harley Quinn is derived from somewhat Stockholm syndrome, a little bit. Not exactly, but a little bit of it. Like or Florence Nightingale syndrome, where she fell in love with her patient, and definitely donned a persona that definitely makes the jesters at Circus Circus a little more ridiculous. Seriously, her first outfit makes the Goblin from Toy Castle look ridiculous. Any Canadians in my audience who know that reference, good for you. But Harley Quinn wasn't just a psychiatrist or a woman who was psychotically manipulated by the Joker. She had some skills going into this. She was in gymnastics when she was little, so she's very flexible and maneuverable, as we've seen throughout the game and the shows, which makes her a great sidekick. Her psychotic mind rivals the Joker in her designs for weapons, like a gun with a rocket launcher haphazardly duct taped. It's good to know that crazy couples have good similar interests. Not only that, but throughout the show, throughout everything, Harley Quinn can be seen as monstrous, an abuse victim, or just a girl who wants to be loved and does everything she can to keep it. All I know is I'm one of those people who will love Harley no matter what. And let's get this crazy girl and continue on with the list. Coming at number 5. One of the few who doesn't see himself as a criminal and instead sees himself as eradicating criminals, Hugo Strange, ladies and gentlemen. One of the few people in the Batman lore who figured out Bruce Wayne's identity. And not from manipulation or anything like that. It was from a psychological profile and narrowing it down. Okay, in the Arkham games, it was just, Ra's al Ghul told him. And, I mean, that kind of takes away all the genius out of it. But overall, Hugo Strange is a pretty cool character. I mean, I've seen numerous versions of him, from the plump, pudgy psychopath and the Batman to B.D. Wong in Gotham. And I gotta say, wonderful casting for that. Gotta say. What gets Hugo a little bit on this higher, near the top of the list, is the fact that he's not a villain. He's a villain who doesn't really do anything evil except manipulate other villains and manipulate events in order for things to transpire in a certain amount of time, which is one of those villains who doesn't really get his own hands dirty. He lets others do the dirty work, and that's what makes him a cool villain. Not only that, but from what I gather, there's always a little bit of resentment on his part when it comes to Batman. Because from what I gathered in like the interview tapes in Gotham and the Arkham games, is that he has a little bit of an overly obsession with Batman where he wants to become the Batman. I don't get it. I guess it's kind of this hero worship mixed with jealousy kind of thing going on. And for a psychiatrist, you think he would be able to make his own diagnosis on himself. But he gets up on the list because he's not a villain. He barely gets his hands dirty. And he kind of goes toe-to-toe with Batman in terms of thought. In terms of not wanting to expose Batman, but just to show him that no matter what he does, something's going to go wrong. And that he's the cause of all the villains in Gotham. And that he's the disease and Hugo is the cure. Okay, I think I'm going to need a timeout from that therapy session. Coming at number 4. What happens when you cross a plant activist with some toxic chemicals in a gorgeous body that can entice men and women? Right here. That's what you get. Poison Ivy takes the number 4 spot because she's one of the... Again, she wasn't a villain to begin with. She just got caught up in a bad situation where she almost died because of toxic chemicals. But in comic books world, getting exposed to toxic chemicals mutates your DNA and doesn't actually put you in the ground. This wallflower blossomed into a gorgeous rose with toxic thorns. Poison Ivy is a great villain because she doesn't see herself as a human anymore. She sees herself as a plant trying to fight off the dangers of the human race by retaking Mother Earth and what she used to be. And I swear to God, every time they do a different version of Poison Ivy, I love every little bit of it. Because every single one has all the fixins. They got the gorgeous body with the very, very beautiful voice that can allure any into her bed of ivy. Toxic kiss is definitely a kiss worth dying for in some occasions. And just her ability to control the floral around her and to increase it to amazing lengths definitely makes her one of the more dangerous Batman foes. And also because she's got the pheromone where she can pretty much intoxicate and manipulate anyone who breathes it in. Kind of like how my girlfriend manipulates me into doing what she wants most of the time. And I do it gladly. And another thing that always gets me with Poison Ivy, in previous installments, like Arkham Knight and the Harley Quinn TV series, Poison Ivy hasn't been... if I'm counting that correctly, in Harley Quinn, she does kill a bunch of people in the most gruesome ways possible. One thing I really love is that they kind of... What they did to Harley a little bit in some of the games, like Injustice 2, and the movies, they kind of make her not so much as a villain most of the time, and kind of a person who's just trying to be who they are and trying to find themselves. And that's what I like about what they've been doing with Ivy lately. I still love her as a villain, though, but if they're trying to make this girl turn over a new leaf, I'm all for it, as long as they do it as long as they don't do it forcefully. They need to do it in a good way. Well, the grass is always greener on this girl's side of the wall, and now let's start setting those flowers on fire. Coming in number 3, Firefly, Garfield Lynns. And no, I'm not talking about the stupid cat from the newspaper. Garfield Lynns was a pyromaniac before all this happened, but his big accident turned out to be a benefit. Over 80% of his body is crispy now, like a pork sandwich Okay, I'm going too far with the burn jokes. He's got a jetpack, a flamethrower, pyro bombs, and a psychotic need to burn. If only they didn't make him such a terrible side mission in Arkham Knight. And they made him kind of main story in Arkham Origins. But overall, I still love the villain because one thing I love about every single Batman villain is how they handle different personality quirks and derangements, such as schizophrenia, split personality disorder, abuse, pyromania. They make this they use it as a focal point for a villain, and they do it beautifully. I love the design that they have him kind of being this small little dude, well, not small, but weak dude, but with his gear, he's absolutely unstoppable. Mostly. And that's one thing I really want to see in future installments of Batman. I want to see Garfield wins. I want to see Firefly flying through the sky. Maybe we can get a game where we play as the villains, because playing as Firefly would be the perfect thing to do. I mean, we're playing as Iron Man in the Avengers game, so why can't they do the same thing with Firefly? One thing that really gets him higher on the list is the amount of times he isn't shown in media. Like, he was in the Batman game, he was in the Batman games, he was in the Batman TV show. They did a female version of him in Gotham, which honestly, goddamn, flames never looked so hot. But I'm gonna say they did it really well, making her afraid of fire. And then as she worked with it and then she got a little burned, they made it all the more cooler. And her obsession with fire. And I love it. Turning something that he used to work with and turning into the thing that caused his pain into the focal point for him being a criminal. I love it. Gotham will burn as this Firefly flies through the sky. Coming in at number 2. Riddle me this, riddle me that. What villain always has an obsession with a big dumb bat? The Riddler takes the number 2 spot, Edward Nygma. I love every time. Okay, I'm just gonna say this. I love Riddler, but I hate collecting all of his damn trophies. So, not in the next one. Just gonna say. Riddler is beyond the smartest, right next to Hugo Strange, one of the smartest Batman villains to date. And I love that. I love how he's done different renditions of him in all the other media, from being a scientist to being a CSI in the GCPD to just being a guy who hates being outsmarted or hates dumb people, having to do questions and riddles with all of his crimes. He presents the perfect puzzle for the greatest detective. And I love the yin and yang there. Whereas Clayface and Killer Croc and Bane deal with Batman being a great fighter, Riddler is one of the few villains that really challenges the mind of Batman, the detective mind. And I love that in Riddler, because myself, I'm definitely kind of a Riddler dude. I love puzzles. I love solving puzzles. I don't always like a violent solution to everything. If I can solve it using my brain, I love doing that. And the same thing with Riddler. He's a scrawny dude who looks like the only gym he's ever been to is in Pokemon. And that portrays to his psychology of needing to be smarter than everyone. And every time Batman prevails, he always insists that he cheats somehow, or that puzzle wasn't his best work. He's one of those kids who hates being shown up, but comes up with an excuse, except for, maybe I'm just not as smart as I think I am. He's that kind of personality trait, kind of OCD with a God complex a little bit. And I love that about Riddler. I can't wait to see more of his puzzles in future games, future shows, or, seriously, can we get him in a movie? Please? I mean, Black Mask got it in the new Birds of Prey, and he's been And he hasn't been in that much either. So, work on it. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, with the Clown Prince of Crime off the table, the number one spot is something to fear. Dr. Jonathan Crane, Scarecrow, is the number one pick for my favorite Batman villain. Why? Because fear is something that everyone goes through in the world. Yes, there are different psychoses, there's different personality traits in the world, but one thing everyone has in them is fear. And that's where Jonathan Crane rules. Like, he uses this beyond what a lot of people would do. And even in the shows, they do him so well and so creepy, which is why I love him. He's the face of fear. Anytime you think of villains and you think of fear, are you going to think of Scarecrow or are you going to think of Sinestro from the Lantern Corps? Get out of there, Sinestro. It's Scarecrow. Not only that, but he uses a fear toxin. I mean, having someone face their fears in a generic sense is one thing, but actually creating a chemical to induce someone's fear is beyond psychotic. It's a perfect chemical weapon as shown in Arkham Knight. And it's not just the way he goes about it, like he's trying to control everyone with their fear and be a great criminal, but it's also his own fear of the Batman that gets him half the time. Because like that shows in Arkham Knight, he's scared of the Batman. He's terrified. But throughout the games, he's a normal guy until the third game. And another thing why Scarecrow gets a little bit more on the edge is his designs. Throughout everything, he goes from a traditional Scarecrow, like you would find in the wheat field, with a farmer's scythe, making him look like the Fear Reaper, to having this creepy, sunken in, skinny, nightmare fuel Scarecrow and plus the little injectors on his fingers make him even more terrifying because and then in the third game, that took it over the top. Having his face being mauled by Croc in Arkham Asylum, patches of skin to look like his classic leather bag mask, and it creeps me out, but it does it so well. It adds to the element of fear. He's the embodiment of fear, and he wants you to damn know it. And not only that, because of his disability that happened after getting attacked by Croc, he's pretty much stationary throughout the entire game, having very little mobility. And that is something that makes him even scarier, that he does everything via his fear gas, his fear toxin, everything he does. It's all about driving the power of fear. And all honesty, that's what makes him a fantastic villain. Yes, he's not the main in most stuff, except in Arkham Knight, but when he's center stage, he makes his presence known, and you will be terrified if you see that face in your nightmares. And ladies and gentlemen, that was my top 13 Batman villains. I hope you enjoyed the list. Like, comment, subscribe down below, and that's it for September. Wait a minute, my favorite time of the year is coming, ladies and gentlemen. And to start it off, join me next time as we play a game of cards with the mistress of all evil. Get ready for Villain Month. This is Gamer K, logging out.